She walked into our office, convinced she'd have to work until 72. By the end of the conversation, she knew she could retire at 64 without changing a single dollar of her savings. I want to tell you what happened in that meeting because the gap between what she believed and what was true is the gap I see in almost every plan we look at. I'm Nico, and for 16 years, I've helped families think more clearly about retirement. Now, before I tell you about her, she's a composite. She's not one specific client. She's stitched together from patterns we've seen across many real first meetings. And the reason I'm telling you this version is that the pattern is so common and the gap between what people believe about their retirement and what's actually true is so consistent that I think you'll see yourself in at least part of her story. So let me describe her. She's 60 years old, her husband retired 2 years ago, she runs a successful small business, and has about $1.4 million in retirement accounts. Solid, but not what she thought she needed. She's been quietly telling herself for years that she'll have to work until 72 to feel safe. Not because anyone told her that, but because nobody had ever helped her run the actual math. Her belief about her retirement isn't based on a plan, it's based on a feeling. And the feeling is, I don't know if I have enough, so I better just keep working. That's the most common belief we encounter in first meetings. It's almost never grounded in real numbers, by the way. It's grounded in fear and in not knowing what to look at. What we do in our first conversation is something we call the Retirement Readiness Assessment. It's a 10-page written report, and it maps out what's working in someone's plan and what isn't. It looks at all 5 pillars: income, investments, taxes, healthcare, legacy, and it shows them on one page. Here's what we found in her case. On the income side, she had 3 sources she hadn't thought of as actual income. Social Security at her own benefit, a spousal benefit option she didn't know existed, and her business had value that she could keep either generating income from or just sell. She had a rental property that was generating $2,400 a month that she'd been categorizing in her head as extra rather than core retirement income. And on the investment side, she was holding cash, a lot of it, about $200,000 sitting in a savings account at a fraction of an interest rate. She thought she was being safe, but she was actually just losing ground to inflation every year while her portfolio worked harder than it needed to in other places. On the tax side, she had about $800,000 in traditional IRA, a future tax problem that was going to hit her hard in her 70s when RMDs kicked in. So we mapped out a multi-year Roth conversion strategy for her early in her 60s that could shift a meaningful portion from taxable to tax-free at a tax cost lower now than what she'd pay later. On the healthcare side, she had never priced out the gap between retiring at 64 and using Medicare at 65. It was scary in her imagination, and on paper it was manageable. On the legacy side, she had a will, but it was from 2009, so it was out of date. It was 3 states ago and it's put together, and we flagged that. None of this was hidden information. All of it was in her statements, her tax returns, her insurance policies. What she didn't have was somebody who could look at it all at the same time and connect the dots. There's a moment I want to describe to you because it happens in almost every one of these meetings. We finished walking through the assessment. She sat with the report in her hand and she said, and I'll never forget this, I've been carrying this around for years. Not the report, but the fear, the conviction that she had to keep working until she was 72, and the weight of not knowing. She didn't suddenly become rich. Her numbers didn't change. What changed was that for the first time in years, she could see her retirement instead of just feeling her way through it. And what she could see was that she had options. That's what we mean when we talk about confidence in retirement. Greater confidence or greater clarity. Those aren't soft words. Confidence isn't a feeling you decide to have. It's the byproduct of seeing your situation clearly enough to know what's true. She walked out of that meeting knowing she could retire at 64, not 72. Not because we told her she could, but because she saw, on paper, what made that possible. Now, your numbers are not her numbers, and your situation is not her situation. I'm not telling you this story because I want you to think, oh, cool, I can retire 8 years earlier than I thought too. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. That's not the point. The point is that almost every pre-retiree we sit with is carrying a belief about their retirement that has never been pressure tested against actual numbers. Sometimes the belief is too optimistic. Sometimes it's too pessimistic. Either way, the belief is running the show, and the belief is almost always wrong, either in one direction or the other. If you're 5 to 10 years from retirement, or even already in retirement, here's what I'd ask you to think about. What's the thing you've been quietly telling yourself about your retirement? About when, about how much, about whether you'll be okay. the question that has never actually been tested against your full financial picture. Whatever that is, the belief is either making your retirement smaller than it needs to be, or it's about to make your retirement harder than you realize. So here are 3 things you can do to get more clarity. First, name the belief. Write down the one sentence you've been quietly telling yourself about your retirement. I'll have to work till 72. We probably can't travel like we wanted. If something happens to me, or the spouse won't know what to do, or we'll be fine. Whatever yours is, get it out of your head and on paper. Second, get it tested against your actual numbers across all 5 pillars, not just your portfolio, your tax picture, your healthcare situation, your income sources, your legacy structure. Third, do it now, not later. The window where you can still adjust your retirement is the window before your retirement. Once you're in it, the options do shrink fast. At Momentum Wealth, the Retire Forward Readiness Assessment is the tool we use to get those beliefs out of your head and onto paper, where you can actually look at them. It's a 10-page written report I described. We offer it on a complimentary basis to qualified pre-retirees within 10 years of retirement, and even those who are already in retirement. There's a link in the description if you want to know more about it. You've worked too long, saved too much, and sacrificed too much to leave any of this to chance. I'm Nico. Thanks for watching.